Hello everyone, let's start one more episode of our microservice in and out course. If you're not subscribed yet, this is the right time to go ahead and subscribe because there are more to come. And if you find this video, but if you couldn't find other video, if you didn't watch other video, please go ahead back and watch those video because this is one of other continuation video. I mean, if you're looking for this topic, yeah, please go ahead. But if you're looking for something to learn from the beginning, we encourage you to go back and learn from the episode 1. And the project which related to this episode is going to publish to GitHub, so you can take that project and go through that. So in the last video, what we have done is we implemented our UI and we authenticate with our authorization server for the authorization code flow. So this video, I'm going to teach you how to make it more real production ready, and or else add all those best practices what we follow in the industry. So this is what we are going to do, right? So if you remember in the video number 11, I think we implemented our profile service and we integrate that with our authorization server. So this video, what I'm going to do is first I'm going to implement the single sign-on, which means when you go to secure page, it will redirect to your authorization server. Then you need to enter username and password. Then it come back to your secure page. So from there, you can invoke your profile service, but without taking token again. Which means we are going to use the same token which we have, which we get when you log into the authorization server, which is single sign-on. That means once you sign in to authorization server, so you can access any service which permitted to access by that token, right? So you don't need to sign in again and again when you invoke new services. So first we are going to see how we can do that, and same time we are going to fetch those record and load into the UI, and meantime we are going to do little bit of error handling. I have a separate video about the error handling on the microservices, or exception handling on the microservices. So in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Okay, so let's jump into the topic. Again, if you're not subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe right now. And also if you have audience which interesting on this type of videos, please go ahead and share this video, so in that case we can get more people to learn these awesome topics. Okay, so let's jump. So here I have loaded all my 3 services, right? So authorization server and rent UI, which is coming from the last video, and the profile service I have taken it from the video number 11. So if you remember, when we create this is the service which we created in the very first and second video, which means just we need to prove something that microservice, how microservices work, right? We did not follow any best practices. So I'm planning to do a separate video which is may not directly relevant with this course, with all the best practices of implementing REST services, right? So till that, I'm going to go to this service and implement certain practices for this, right? So this is the profile service, this is the profile controller, right? So right now we have 3 endpoints. One is a profile, which you give the profile, and the second one is profile, and it's a get method. This is a profile create method with a post, and other one is a profiles, right? So I'm going to little bit at the industry practices, right? So we will have a separate video. Till that I'll little bit explain. So here we are returning customer, right? So it makes sense to use this as a customer, right? So but we know in a system we have multiple customers, right? It's not a one customer, right? So customer is a collection, right? In the customer table you will have a multiple customer record. So the right way is to name this endpoint as a customers, right? And I'm not going to change this authorities roles because they're tightly coupled with the authorization server. And here also I'm going to change as a customers, right? So with this way I'm going to take, okay, if you take this one, right, this is returning all the customers, right? This is to return all customers, right? But if the customer has one address, it is okay to use customer slash customer ID slash address. But since we have multiple customers, we should choose the customers, right? So here is little bit different. We are going to fetch the single customer based on the given ID. But so far we have used the request param, which comes with that question mark and then the parameter, right? So but since we haven't discussed the best practices yet, so this is okay for now, but this is not the right way to do it, right? So the right way is you need to use here the customer ID, something like this, right? So then you cannot use the request param, so you need to use the path variable, right? So path variable, and then the variable name is ID, right? So path variables, the variable name is ID, right? So this is the way you can pass here, let's say customer ID, right? So you pass that also here, right? So if you don't understand this, why we doing this, don't worry, I'm going to do a separate video about all the best practices and the things we should follow on when we design the REST services, right? But for now this is okay, right? So this is a little bit change I have done to make it make it formal, make it industrial standard, right? Now what I'm going to do is this one I'm going to change for a moment for admin, right? Because right now a Krish user don't have access to fetch all the roles, right? So I'm going to make it to admin, so then Krish user will have the same access, right? So that's the only thing I'm going to do with the profile service. So let's go back to our so nothing to change on authorization server actually, right? So let's go here and find our secure page, right? And also we need to change something on the UI controller, right? So here I'm going to change things a little bit, right? So okay, for right now we are calling secure endpoints, right? When you call the secure endpoint, it just load the secure, right, which is little empty, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a button here. So when we load this, you will have a button to fetch the customers, right? So to do that, I need to get theme leaf namespace here. So I'm going to use XML namespace for theme leaf is HTTP. I'm going to use this namespace to handle my response here, right? For now, I'm just going to add a button for this page. So for that, I'm going to add a new form. So here I'm going to, for now we don't have this, I'm going to create a new endpoint called customers, right? I'm going to create a new endpoint called customers on the UI service, right? The customer endpoint is available on the profile service, but for the UI service I'm going to also create the customers endpoint. So in the form, I'm going to use a button. So these are inbuilt classes with the Bootstrap. Last time we learned this. So I'm going to use a primary button here, and I'm going to give a name called customers. All right. So if you run this now, so since auth server running on, since now we have a other service to run, so I'm going to change my profile service to run on different port, right? So let's go back and change that here. So I'm going to tell the profile service to run on let's say 8181. right? So that is the port I'm going to ask profile service to run, right? So profile service run on port 8181 and the UI will run on a port 8080. So I'm going to start the authorization server. It's we haven't changed anything on the authorization server, and I'm going to use the rent UI application, right? We'll see is there any errors or something, right? So looks like no errors, and the rent UI, that's also don't have any errors, right? So to make it easy, I'm going to use this one, localhost 8080/secure. Right, so now it's asking username and password, so I'm going to give my username and password, right? So it's authorized, and now you can see there is a button came here to get the customers, right? So now my expectation is now I'm already signed in, right? So but to call this customer, when I click the customer, I want to invoke endpoint from profile service, right? But we know in order to open the profiles, in order to invoke the profile service, we need the access token, right? So last time in the video number 11, we configured profile service to authorization server. So now we cannot invoke the authorization profile service without a token, right? So but here what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the token which this UI received when the user sign in, right? So when the user sign in, UI received a token. I'm going to use that token to invoke the profile service. If you go back to our the REST client, right? So you can see I'm going to show you this for one more time. If you're going to fetch all profiles, right, let's get the access token first, right? So now I have access token. Let's copy this, go to fetch all profiles, put this token, right? So now I think I didn't start the profile service yet, so let's go ahead and start the profile service. Okay, so no errors. Let's run this. Okay, it says not found. Okay, so now we don't have a profiles. Now we have to use as customers, right? So now you get all the records, right? But in case if you're not using the token, you are getting unauthorized error, right? Because that is secured. So now we are going to invoke that same service when we click this button, but we are not going to obtain token again. Rather than we are going to use the token which this UI received when the user login. So let's go back and see how we do that, right? So I'm going to close everything to avoid your confusion, right? So and I'm going to stop all running servers as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to here UI, the UI controller, right? So there are multiple ways you do this, right? But I'm going to do this in this very simple way. So first I'm going to create AutoWire REST template, right? So I'm going to use AutoWire REST template. So why I need the REST template? Because REST template is the way you can invoke a remote service, right? So since I don't have this here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a different package here called config package, right? So here I'm going to create REST service config REST template configurer, okay? So I'm going to annotate that with configuration and annotation. Okay, here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create REST template get REST template method, right? So this return new REST template, right? So this way we can so I'm going to mark this as a B, right? So this way I can auto-write the REST template now from here, right? So now it is done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create new access token class here, right? I'm going to create new access token class here. You don't have to do this in this way. You can do in any preferred way you want, right? I'm going to create a method, public method here, public. I'm going to create this as a static method for now. String get access token, right? And from here I'm going to get the access token from my context, the context what I have right now, O2 authentication detail, O2 authentication detail, right? And I'm going to get authentication detail equal security context holder dot get context dot get authentication dot get details, right? So this comes as an object, so you need to cast this to here, something like this. So now here in this authentication detail you have a token, right? So now what you can do is you can return authentication details dot get token type concat space concat authentication details dot get token value, right? So this is our access token, right? So we extracted this from the context. So now I'm going to go here to add new method to fetch the customers, right? So here I can say load customers, right? For now I'm going to return the same page, right? So now what we need to do is we need to use this REST template and invoke our profile service endpoint by using the access token, right? Otherwise it will say access denied. So to pass the access token I need HTTP headers equal new HTTP headers, right? So HTTP headers dot add, so my header is authorization header, right? The value is access token dot get access token, right? So you can write the same those code here, that's fine, but I did this in this way, right? So now I need to use the REST template to invoke my endpoint. For that I need the HTTP entity. So I'm going to get HTTP entity, right? And it is better if I get the customers here, right? So for now I don't have the customers, right? Because I don't have that as a dependency for my project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this dependency from the profile service, right? In the profile service POM file we use RenCloud Commons, right? So in the RenCloud Commons is the project we used to have model classes, right? All the model classes in this project, so we can get the model class from this project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this dependency and add it to here, right? And add it to here. So then I can access the this customer model class from my UI service, right? So let's import that, and now go back here, UI controller. I should be able to use HTTP entity from customer type, right? So now I have a custom object, so I can say customer HTTP entity, name doesn't matter much, right? So new HTTP entity. Now we are going to pass this HTTP headers here, right? So now I have HTTP entity. I'm going to send this HTTP entity to get my response entity. But the response entity, I'm getting multiple customers. For the response entity, I'm going to use response entity. I'm going to use customer type array, right? So customer type array, something like this, okay? And response entity. Okay, so I'm going to assign this from REST template output, right? So I'm going to use the exchange for this one, so that is easy for me. So I need to use the URL here, right? So HTTP. So I'm going to, it's easy, let's copy from here, right? So it is here, let's copy this one. And my method is HTTP method dot get, and then I need to pass my HTTP entity, and then I need to tell how this response should serialize, right? So response class, the type of my response, right? So now I'm good. I have this one. So now what I need to do is I need to for this method I'm going to get the model, right? So string model. So for the model I'm going to add this as an attribute, right? So model dot add attribute, I'm going to say customers response entity dot get body, right? So you can see here get body is customer type array, so I'm going to add that, right? For now I'm okay, right? So there are multiple ways to do this, right? Rather than you are returning a string here, you can return something called model view, right? So in that case model and view go together, that is the more formal, but I'm following this so it's easy to understand since this is what we are following, right? So we can have other separate video to fine tune the code and make all those things, right? So now we are good, right? So we are okay with the happy part. If you want, we can try this. Look, yeah, let's try this first. Okay, so then we can go to the next phase. Okay, so I'm going to start my authorization server first. Right, so let's go. Let's get the errors and fix the errors. Okay. Right, so then same time I'm going to start my profile service and also my rent UI, right? So keep in mind, even though this work, right, we are not adding anything to the rent UI, we didn't render anything, right? So but if you want, you can to get this to see whether this is working, right? So we can add some sys out here. So you can say response entity dot get body dot you can say it's a length, right? So you can print the length here to see whether this is really working, right? So if this is really working, we need to get, I think it's a 506 because we have 506 customers in our database, right? So let's since we changed this, so let's restart this. Okay, so we are good. Let's go back to UI and see what's happening, right? So I'm going to use incognito window, so it's easy for me to I don't need to log out. So localhost 8080, so this is fine, it's working. So now I go secure, right? So it's asking my username and password, and now I get customers, right? So when I click the customer, right, it's supposed to invoke my endpoint, right? And you can see here it's printing 5. That means this go to the backend and take all those 5 records, right? So you can see this if you enable this network window, right? So this is we learned last time, right? So go to network window, and while you stay here, you click this, so you can see what's the request going, right? So that's a request go to localhost 8080 customers, right? So now localhost 8080 customers comes here, and then it go here and go to this endpoint and get the response, and that's what happening here. So now let's try to render this response in the our UI, right? So I'm going to go back to my, I'm going to use the same page, right? So I don't need to create other page in that case. I'm a little lazy for that. Okay, so let's put some tables here and render this response in the UI. So I'm going to go out from the Jumbotron and stay in the container, right? So here let's create a table, right? And I'm going to use the class is table, right? In the table, first I'm going to implement the happy path. I'm going to create a row, and inside the row, and before that I'm going to create a table head, and so in the table row, this row, I'm going to iterate through this, right? So I'm going to theme leaf for each loop, right? Th each, right? Each on customer, right? Over customers. So let's see what I have added here. UI controller is a customers, right? So let's come back. Right, so run over customers. So now I'm going to use a few TDs, and inside the TD I'm going to use a span, so directly I can access my object. So th text, so what I need to use is customer dot first name, right? So span here. So I'm going to copy this for 3 times, and last name and DL number. Right. So let's put this entire block into T body. Right. So keep in mind we need to add this namespace in order for this to work. Okay. So let's see what's happening now. Okay. Since I already authenticated, I'm going to close this one. Since I already authenticated, technically I don't need to authenticate now anymore. Right. So now you can see the response is rendered into my page, right? So this is nice. So let's go from the beginning, right? So localhost 8080. So we go to secure page, right? So we go to secure page. This time it won't ask me to log in because I already logged in. So I click the customers. Now it load the customers. How this work? So this go to its own service, which is the customer endpoint of the UI service, right? So customer endpoint of the UI service. But keep in mind the UI service do not have access to database. So what the UI service customer endpoint does is it talk to backend. So now the problem is now this is okay. This is the happy part, right? So now let's see how this work if this is like if has some problem, right? For example, the Krish user don't have access to get if we block from here, right? So let's go here and block again. So go main controller, right? So if you remember we changed this to admin, right? So I'm going to change it back to operator, right? So now if it is operator, the Krish user don't have access to get this customer's endpoint, right? Access this customer's endpoint. Okay. So let's see if that in that case what happened. Let's see in that case what's happening, right? So I'm going to close this and get a new incognito window. Let's go to localhost 8080 secure. Okay, it's fine. Maybe I'm still have some other incognito window open, so that's why it directly come here. So now I'm going to click customers. Now you can see it's a 403 null, right? So that means we didn't handle this error properly. So what happens here, it's a 403 is a forbidden. So but this is very ugly in the user perspective. This is very ugly, right? We need to get the proper error handling here, right? So what we are going to do is let's do the full error handling video about the centralized error handling with the control advice, but this is not that. I'm going to show you how to do this simple error handling part, exception handling part here. Sorry about the word error handling, actually we are handling exceptions. Okay, so let's come back. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to wrap this with the try catch block. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this with the try catch block. Okay, so here I'm going to catch HTTP code exception, HTTP status code exception, right? So because we know that HTTP has a state code series, status code series, right? So 100, 200, 300, 400, right? The 200 series is considered as a success, right? So if it is nothing found in the 200, this considered is as an error or exception, not the error, it's exception, right? So now we catch that. So now I'm going to render this as a response back to UI. So I'm going to create the response entity, right? So sample response entity dot status, right? So we can set some status here. What is the status code I need to get? So I'm going to inherit that from the original status code. So e dot get row status code, right? So the row status code is HTTP status code type output, but the row status code is just an integer, right? And dot set body, get response body as a string, yeah, that one, right? So get response body as a string, right? So if you want to send the headers also, you can do that too, right? So you can say headers is e dot get headers, get response headers, right? So you can do that too. So now what happening here, we have this response entity, but the adding to the model I'm going to do the after. Yeah, you can do that here. So if the catch comes here, so you can say model dot add attribute, so you can say error, right? And response entity, right? So I'm going to add the response entity. Okay, so this is done. So now what we do here, simply if we have a happy path, then we add that response entity as a customers, but if there is any exception on the remote call, we are going to get that exception and add as an error here, right? So now what we need to do is we need to show this in our UI page, right? So what I'm thinking is, if there's an error, first I'm going to check whether there's an error, right? So I'm going to use a div, right? So th unless error null, right? If the error is not null, if the error is not null, I want to create a table, and again class is table, right? And in this table I have a row, and in this row I have two TDs, right? So one TD is th text, error dot status code, right? So in other one I'm going to use error dot body. Yes, it just have two tables, right? So now if we do this, we can go and see here, it will show the both tables, right? So because if there is error, only this table will show, but even though you have error, it's going to show this table as well, right? So I'm going to block this table like this, right? So I just cut it for now, div th if error null, right? So you need to show this table only and only if error is null, right? So in that case, if there is no error only, it will show the data table, right? So let's run this, and I think I restart the profile application. Let's run this as well. UI application. Okay, so let's refresh this. So now you can see it says 403 forbidden, right? And it see the error properly, right? So in this case, now you can see, like, even though there is an error, it shows in a proper way, right? So you can do little bit make it little beauty by adding this header part to this table as well, right? So you don't need 3, you just need 2, right? So you can say status code and error, right? So let's start again. Right, so I manually generate this forbidden scenario, right? So now you can see status code and error. It's like give a little beautiful look, right? So now, even though your UI is break, you don't get that ugly unreadable error page, right? You can show the errors itself on your page as well, right? So this is logged with Krish, so that is why it give you a forbidden error, right? So now let's see. Yes, I think I have this one. That's why last time it didn't work. So now if you go with a nuan text, ideally they should work, right? So secure, right? So nuan and sparse. So now if you go with a nuan, they should work because nuan is with the right function. So you can see, right? So it doesn't work with Krish, right? If you close this, if you go with Krish, it doesn't work, right? So when you try this, it give you an error, right? But if you go with the nuan, it's work because of the role, right? So Krish don't have the proper role, but nuan do have the proper role, right? So that's the reason behind it, right? So nuan sparse, now it's working, right? So I'm going to reset it back to to work it to the Krish, right? So let's change this, and even I changed here, I didn't restart, so it didn't apply. So let's restart it. So now it will start to work for the Krish as well, right? So we learned 3 things here. One, how to do the single sign-on, right? Once you log into your UI, how you can use the same token to invoke other services. That's the lesson number 1. So number 2, how you can get the response and render on your UI, right? So number 3, how you can do basic error handling. So in that case, you won't see these ugly error pages, but rather than user will see beautiful error pages, right? So I think this is a little bit got lengthier than I expected, but there are so many things to learn. So in the next video, I'm going to put in one more step to make this more industry standard. So it will go away from the security, and I'm going to go with some circuit breaker patterns, load balancing, discovery, and those areas, going to touch those areas, right? So until meet again on the next video, make sure you subscribe, and if you learn something from this video, please go ahead and share this video with your audience if you think they are interesting, so then we can make more people learn on these technologies. Then see you soon. Till that, take care.